The black leather briefcase slipped from the back seat and hit the floor with a dull thud as the car screeched to a halt. Papers spilled slightly from the side pocket. The driver froze. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. From the rearview mirror, the billionaire watched quietly. "Stop here," the man in the back seat said calmly. The driver obeyed, pulling over beside a quiet roadside. The billionaire leaned forward, deliberately glancing at the fallen briefcase but saying nothing. Instead, he opened the door and stepped out. "I'll be back in 10 minutes, he said. Then he walked away. The driver stared at the briefcase. It was half open. Inside, he could clearly see bundles of cash, a gold pen, and what looked like confidential documents. He swallowed hard. In the distance, the billionaire turned the corner, but he didn't actually leave. He stood behind a building, watching. Victor Cole was not just wealthy. He was known across the country as a self-made billionaire whose companies spanned logistics, construction, and finance. People described him as brilliant, ruthless, and extremely careful about trust. After being betrayed by a former business partner who stole millions, he had become obsessed with one thing: loyalty. He believed honesty could not be measured in interviews or recommendations. It had to be tested. And today he was testing his new driver. The young man behind the wheel was named Daniel. He had been working for Victor for only 3 weeks. Quiet, respectful, and punctual, he never spoke unless spoken to. His file said he came from a poor neighborhood, no university degree, and had previously worked as a delivery rider. Victor didn't trust files. He trusted actions. Back in the car, Daniel looked again at the briefcase. His heart pounded. He imagined what that money could do. His mother needed surgery. His younger sister had been sent home from school for unpaid fees. Rent was overdue. He reached out slowly, then stopped. "No," he whispered to himself. Instead, he carefully lifted the briefcase, closed it, and placed it back on the seat. Then he adjusted it so it wouldn't fall again. But after a few seconds, he picked it up again. Victor narrowed his eyes from afar. Daniel opened the glove compartment, removed a clean cloth, and wiped dust off the briefcase before setting it neatly beside him. Then he locked all the doors and sat upright, eyes forward. Victor waited longer. 5 minutes passed. Daniel didn't move. 10 minutes passed. Daniel still didn't move. Victor finally returned, expression unreadable. He opened the back door and sat down. "Everything all right?" he asked casually. "Yes, sir," Daniel replied. Victor glanced at the briefcase. "Did it fall?" "Yes, sir. I placed it back." Victor looked at him through the mirror. "You didn't check inside?" Daniel hesitated. "No, sir." Victor leaned back, saying nothing. But inside, he noted the first result. They drove in silence until they reached Victor's office building. As Daniel stepped out to open the door, Victor spoke again. "Daniel." "Yes, sir." "Tomorrow morning, pick me up at 6. "Yes, sir." The next morning, Victor carried another bag, this one smaller. As they drove, Victor suddenly said, "Stop at the bank." Daniel parked. Victor handed him the bag. "Take this inside. Deposit it. The details are written inside." Daniel accepted it carefully. "Yes, sir." Inside the bag were stacks of cash. Much more than before. The deposit slip contained Victor's account number. Daniel walked into the bank. He stood in line, glancing at the bag occasionally. People around him chatted. No one knew what he carried. At the counter, the cashier counted the money. She looked up, surprised. "This is a lot," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You want it deposited fully?" "Yes." She completed the transaction and handed him the receipt. Daniel folded it and returned to the car. "It's done, sir," he said, handing over the receipt. Victor checked it carefully. "Thank you." But the test wasn't over. Over the next week, Victor created small situations. He forgot his phone, left envelopes, overpaid Daniel for fuel. Each time, Daniel returned everything without hesitation. Yet Victor still wasn't satisfied. He needed something bigger. One evening, rain poured heavily as they drove through a busy intersection. Suddenly, Victor spoke urgently. "Turn left. Quickly. Daniel obeyed. They entered a quiet street. Victor leaned forward. I'm expecting a package. Someone will approach the car. Just collect it. Minutes later, a man knocked on the window and handed Daniel a sealed envelope. Then he walked away. Victor pretended to receive a call. Daniel, I need you to drop me at the restaurant ahead. Take the car home after that. I'll call you tomorrow. Yes, sir. Victor stepped out. The envelope remained on the passenger seat. Daniel drove off. But halfway home, he noticed the envelope. It had no name written on it. He hesitated. Should he call? He pulled over under a streetlight. Rain tapped against the windshield. He picked up the envelope. Felt thick. Slowly, he opened it. Inside were stacks of dollars. Daniel's breathing became heavy. This wasn't a small amount. It was enough to solve every problem he had. He leaned back, eyes closed. No one would know, he murmured. Rain intensified. Thunder rolled. He looked at his phone. No missed calls. He imagined his mother smiling after surgery, his sister returning to school. His hands trembled. He reached for the ignition. The car started. But instead of driving home, he made a U-turn. Meanwhile, across the street from the restaurant, Victor sat in another vehicle, watching through tinted glass. He had instructed someone to follow Daniel discreetly. He stopped, the observer reported. Victor's jaw tightened. Now he's opening the envelope. Victor leaned forward. Seconds felt like minutes. What's he doing? Victor asked. The observer squinted. He's thinking. Victor's heartbeat quickened. Then the observer spoke again. He just started the car. Victor held his breath. Which direction? He asked. The observer answered slowly. He's turning back toward you. Victor's eyes widened. But as Daniel drove closer, he noticed something strange ahead. Police lights flashing, blocking part of the road. His grip tightened on the envelope. Daniel slowed down, unsure what to do next. The officer signaled him to stop. Daniel's heart pounded as he rolled down the window. Good evening, the officer said. Daniel forced a smile. Good evening, sir. What's in the envelope? The officer asked, pointing. Daniel froze. And just as he opened his mouth to answer, Victor stepped out from behind the police vehicle, staring directly at him. Daniel's eyes widened. His grip tightened around the envelope. Sir, he whispered, stepping out of the car. Rain dripped from his hair as he held the envelope forward with both hands. I was coming to return this. I didn't know what it was at first. But when I saw the money, I knew I shouldn't keep it. Victor didn't speak immediately. He studied Daniel's face, searching for hesitation, for fear, for any sign of dishonesty. There was none, only nervous sincerity. You opened it, Victor said quietly. Yes, sir, Daniel admitted. I shouldn't have, but I wanted to be sure before returning it. Victor took the envelope slowly. And you decided to come back? Yes, sir. The police officer, who was actually part of Victor's arranged setup, stepped aside without saying another word. Victor motioned for Daniel to get back into the driver's seat. They drove in silence for several minutes. The rain softened, leaving only the hum of the engine and Daniel's pounding heartbeat. He feared he might lose his job. Perhaps Victor would think he had considered stealing. Perhaps the test had already been failed. Finally, Victor spoke. Do you know why I did this? Daniel shook his head. No, sir. I've been betrayed before, Victor said. People I trusted, people I gave everything to, they took advantage. Since then, I don't rely on words. I rely on actions. Daniel swallowed. I understand, sir. Victor leaned forward slightly. You had every reason to keep that money. You needed it. Daniel's eyes flickered in the mirror. Yes, sir. Yet you came back. Daniel nodded quietly. My mother always told me, if I lose honesty, I lose everything. Victor leaned back, thoughtful. They arrived at Victor's mansion. As Daniel prepared to leave, Victor said, Come inside. Daniel hesitated. He had never been invited in before. Sir, come. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. Victor led him to a small office. He opened a drawer and placed a document on the table. "I've been observing you for weeks," Victor said. "Not just tonight. The briefcase, the bank deposit, the fuel money, the phone I forgot. Every situation." Daniel's eyes widened. "Those were tests." "Yes." Victor pushed the document toward him. "You passed all of them." Daniel looked down. It was a contract. "What is this, sir?" "A new position," Victor replied. "Personal assistant and logistics supervisor. Salary 5 times what you earn now. Company accommodation. Full medical coverage for your immediate family." Daniel blinked repeatedly, trying to process the words. "Sir, I don't even have a degree." "I don't need a degree," Victor said. "I need someone I can trust." Daniel's voice trembled. "Are you serious?" Victor gave a rare, faint smile. "Very." Tears formed in Daniel's eyes. He wiped them quickly, embarrassed. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." "I know," Victor said. Weeks passed. Daniel settled into his new role, handling schedules, deliveries, and sensitive tasks. Victor began involving him in small business decisions. Trust grew steadily. One afternoon, Victor called him in. "I want you to deliver this file personally," he said, handing him a sealed folder. "It's important." "Yes, sir." Daniel drove to the location, a modest hospital. He handed the file to the receptionist, who directed him to a private office. A doctor greeted him. "You must be Daniel," the doctor said warmly. "Yes? Please sit." Confused, Daniel sat down. The doctor opened the file. "Your mother's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Everything has been paid in full." Daniel froze. "What?" The doctor smiled. "Mr. Cole arranged it. Also, your sister's school fees for the next 3 years. Covered." Daniel's throat tightened. I didn't ask him." "Sometimes," the doctor said, "help comes without asking." Daniel rushed back to the car, hands shaking. He called Victor immediately. "Sir, the hospital." "Yes," Victor said calmly. "Why?" Victor paused. "Because honesty deserves more than praise. It deserves opportunity." Daniel couldn't speak. Tears rolled freely now. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. That evening, Daniel visited his mother. She held his hand tightly. "You've always been a good boy," she said. "Your honesty is your wealth." Daniel smiled softly. Weeks later, Daniel visited his old neighborhood. Children waved at him. He handed notebooks to a small boy who reminded him of himself. "Always be honest," Daniel told him. "Even when it's hard." The boy nodded. Because sometimes the biggest rewards don't come from what you take, but from what you refuse to take. But just when Daniel thought he understood the full extent of Victor's generosity, a week later, he received a plain white envelope at his desk. Curious, he opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with one line. "You were never really hired as a driver. You were hired as my future business partner." Below it, Victor's signature gleamed. Daniel looked up, stunned. The office door opened, and Victor walked in with a grin. "Surprised?" Victor asked. I thought I was just your driver," Daniel stammered. "You were never just my driver," Victor said. "I needed to see your character, your integrity. And now you'll sit at the table where real decisions are made." Daniel's jaw dropped. The same man who had tested him so subtly had been preparing him for something far bigger than he could ever imagine. Victor leaned back in his chair. Character reveals itself in small moments. You didn't know that wallet would change your life. But now, you're part of building something bigger than you ever dreamed. Daniel nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'll continue to earn that trust, sir." Victor added softly, "You already have." As Daniel walked out of the office, the camera of imagination lingers on him, pausing in the hallway, taking a deep breath. His journey from struggling driver to trusted partner felt unreal. And if this story reminds you that honesty can open doors you never imagined, this is a great moment to support stories like this. A simple like helps more people discover them. Subscribing keeps you connected to more powerful real-life inspired stories. and comment below. What would you have done in Daniel's place? Because honesty may not always pay immediately. It may even feel costly in the moment. But in the long run, it builds trust, and trust builds opportunities. And in Daniel's case, one honest decision didn't just change his day. It changed his entire life. Wow. Daniel's honesty didn't just save him. It completely changed his life. If this story inspired you, don't just watch. Hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe so you never miss powerful, real-life stories like this, and comment below. What would you have done if you were in Daniel's place? I'd love to read your thoughts.